ENTV today. I have with me Teresa Johnson Paul. This is going to be a fun interview. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Excited to interview you. We're going to get into a few different things because you're a co-author in several books. You're an empty nester now. Your life is like just starting. You're starting a whole new chapter. So let's get into this. So how do you introduce yourself, Teresa? When someone says, "Who are you? What do you do?" Because you've done a bunch of things. You've done editing for books, for copy. So how do you start your process of introducing yourself?
Well, I would say right after college, I started working for a small town paper, and my goal was to be a journalist, but I never stopped wanting to be a writer of some sort. I did some freelance writing for 15 years while I was working my day job. Whatever that looked like, a lot of clerical jobs because I was a single mom, and now I've been working in insurance for the last 19 years. But I'd say more of what I have a passion for is what I do outside of my day job. And I really enjoy helping others. My oldest son, he's autistic, and I spent a lot of time for a local parent board, the Autism Society in Central Illinois. And then my personal background is that I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and there's many, many, many people out there that have, but they just don't discuss it. And sometimes we don't know what that looks like, and we joke about it, but it can be something. And then sometimes if you're not healed from that, you'll pick a partner that's not suited for you. And that's what happened to me. And so I've been in codependent recovery for over 24 years. And I learned from that. I grew from that. And then I also like meeting some newcomers in that group and helping them. And then when it came upon the opportunity a couple of years ago, I wanted to co-author a book about autism, but it never worked out because when you're looking for other authors, they have to be on board. And they didn't want to be. So I was like, cool. Or I'd be in contact with somebody else that had already been in a co-authored book about autism. So then there was another opportunity for me to co-author with a certain publisher out in California. And so I jumped on it, and I'd never had the opportunity to write a chapter in a book. And so it was very exciting. And I
Yeah.
liked meeting the other co-authors virtually, and some of them are local to me. So it's been good.
So let's dive into that since that's where we're at right now. So the whole co-authoring space, is it anthology? Is that the wrong word? I keep hearing some
They
words.
say anthology. So if people are familiar with Chicken Soup for the Soul with Jack Canfield, he was probably the first one that was more recognized for it. And they put stories together that had a certain theme. And so I like that I was able to do that. My first one that I co-authored, the title is She is an Overcomer. And I jumped on it because I felt like there are so many things that I've overcome in my life, and I wanted to inspire others by reading my chapter and the whole book as a whole, that if you feel like that you've had challenges in your life, there is hope. And I think for everybody that is going through a challenge, there's the feeling of hopelessness. But if you can get stuck in that, and if you don't think there's a solution to the problem, then you stay hopeless. But then if you feel like at some point there is hope, then you have the courage to keep going on.
Beautifully put. Can we talk about that book? Do you have that book with you? Is that one of the books you have?
Yes.
Can we show that? She is put it closer to your face, like pull it back,
Okay.
pull it back, pull it back. There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Can you talk about what are you prepared to open up about what you've been through so people can resonate with you, Teresa? What you talked about your family you grew up in. What are things? Yeah, where do you want to go with that? Just so people have a reference point.
I think in our family trees that, I never met my great grandfather. And my grandfather, my mom's side, I mean, he was a farmer, but he was a very quiet man. And he would get off, they'd stay laid out in the field. And I mean, he passed away in 1977. So even back then, they didn't have the lights on the tractors and things were open and anything like that. But he was simple. He came in after he was working, you know, in the field. He would eat his dinner and then go watch the news. You know, my other grandparents were more with it, you know, like my mom's grandparents were like old time, you know, it's like they had an outhouse. If anybody is watching knows what those things are. But I remember using it as a kid. And then my grandmother didn't have indoor plumbing until like the mid 80s. And she had this pantry that I never got to go into. And she would stand at the door, you know, from the kitchen. And I thought it was this little bitty closet, and still the bathroom was done up and this pantry was huge. I'm like, this is a huge bathroom, you know, but that's, you know, but not knowing, you know, what our parents parent the best that they can based on how they were parented. And until some healing occurs, you know, we just continue on and on and on. And I even watch some teachers online talk about how the children in schools right now are even it's hard to control the classroom because the parents are doing their job at home. But then I understand the parents too, where they feel overwhelmed, you know, with, you know, both parents are probably working. There's a lot of single parent households. And so these kids are like, we got to behave now that we're in this classroom setting, but my parents didn't make me, you know. And so we just come from these long lines of, you know, dysfunction. And until, you know, there's some sort of healing or learning how to do it better, I think we just keep on passing it on, you know.
Well, how did you learn to do it better then? What did you do differently and how did you figure it out? And what are some secrets you've learned?
So my former spouse was involved with some addiction issues and mental health issues. And I actually honestly probably would have married him just because I grew up in that environment. Even though my father wasn't someone that was addicted to substances, he did overuse them in my early childhood. And then he decided to give it up because it was causing too much problems for the family. And he was embarrassed a little bit. But then the behaviors never changed. So I grew up in a controlling household where, you know, there's one parent. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. You can have a female that's, you know, the controlling one, and, you know, it doesn't matter. It can be either or, you know. And then there's becomes this codependent dynamic that's dysfunctional. And as children, you're raised in it and you don't know. And it doesn't matter what stage I'm the oldest of four, you know. And so me and my sister would help babysit my younger brothers, but my brothers would do what brothers do, you know. It's like you can't keep them completely out of trouble. And then my mom was just completely overwhelmed. She was working 40 hours a week. You know, she has a long commute. So me and my sister would cook dinner, and then so we wouldn't be eating late. And so you just have all those things, you know. And then I go off to college, and I'm just glad to be, you know, out of that environment. But when I'm choosing a partner, I don't know what that looks like. And I meet very nice people that I'm dating, but here I am addicted to the drama, the chaos, the everything, and it looks familiar. And so then I have a distorted feeling of this is love, and I marry it and have children, and things don't work
I
out.
marry it.
Yeah. And then so I ended up in a 12-step program for families and friends of alcoholics and things like that. But I've been going there for 24 years, and I'm a very bullheaded woman. So the first 3 years, I just spent my time saying, well, you don't understand. My spouse is different than your spouse. And so until I gave in, or, you know, surrendered my will over and saying, well, maybe you do have a better way, then things started getting better. And I started to recover, and I started using the steps, and I still go to those meetings every week. I still get into my daily readers. And when you're in that type of program, it's good to have a sponsor, someone that you can trust. And I really, truly think that for those that feel like they're stuck, you know, even if you just go online and do a search, there's even Facebook groups that you come into. even if you're feeling shy about coming to an in-person meeting. And during COVID, they made it available to do these meetings via Zoom rather. And there's even some hybrid meetings also. So they're right now, you can find healing and recovery if you're seeking it. But sometimes we feel alone. We feel alone in that, and we feel ashamed, and there's no reason to be feeling shameful about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I heard a quote recently. It's like guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is, or I did something bad or not good, whatever you want to call it. Shame is I am bad or not good. And there's a difference. And do you think shame is something we just make up then? Like if I feel guilty over, I run over a dog and I could have avoided it easier on the freeway, but I didn't, whatever. You know what I mean? I'll feel guilt. But it's like, do you think shame is a real thing or is it a construct that we make up?
I think it can be distorted sometimes because with my oldest son, he would have been 29. He actually passed away last year. And
Oh,
it
sorry
was
to hear that.
it was due to medical negligence. And he was verbal. He could tell you that his stomach hurt. But I took him into the doctor the day before he passed, and it was
Oh,
appendicitis. And the lab didn't call the doctor didn't call me. And by the next day, this what occurred. And
wow.
I'm going to write another book, and it's going to be a solo book because I have the confidence now that I can do it. But at that same time, I was going through my own health struggle. And I'm a believer, Christian. I don't know why God allows these things to happen, but I was going through a horrific health issue myself, trying to stay alive, basically, because the bottom of my esophagus wouldn't allow food and liquid to my stomach after the first surgery in January. And then I had a successful surgery in May when I found another doctor and hospital in St. Louis. But um, again, I don't want to say I'm a support group junkie, but I kind of am. So when I was with the Autism Society, that group helped me find the services I need for my son. And then I'm going through grief. I've been through two 13-week sessions of grief share. But then even after that, I was still struggling with that false guilt or shame. Like I had a part in my son's passing because I had an overwhelming feeling of responsibility, and you do when you have a disabled child. But I had to know that I did all that I could, and that if I would have done anything differently, it would be learn to ask for help outside of my family. My family is very supportive, but at some point they feel like they're coming apart at both ends. And so I thought, okay, I mean, there was numerous of people in my community would have helped me. I've been going to the same church for a number of years, but that
Wow.
thing where you're afraid to ask for help. And there would have been so many that would have stepped up to the plate, just to keep me company while I rested, helping my son with bathroom assistance or anything like that. And so now I was told by my pastor to do it differently. And that's your amends, to forgive yourself, to move on. And that is what really broke through that constant, how sometimes we have those constant thoughts that ruminate in your mind, and that kind of broke through that.
I love that. It's like a living amends. Can we talk about that more? Like when you've done something that you go label it, whatever you want to call it, but you're like, I want to do differently now. And
Mm-hmm.
you cannot change what you did. And
Yeah.
whether or not you're partially or fully responsible, regardless, it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
can I do now? Can you talk about like living out that amends to be different
Yeah.
on the planet? Can you just go there?
Yeah. So my younger son, I'm so proud of him being verbal and telling me exactly how he feels about things. Sometimes he's been a pain, but at times he's like, Mom, you're doing it again. I'm doing what? You're interfering. You're just being a helicopter mom. And I'm like, I always want to know, would you like a mom that's like really involved in your life, wants to make sure you're doing well in school? Or do you want somebody that totally neglects you and doesn't care what you're doing out there, just wreaking havoc in the world? He says, but look, he's an adult. He'll turn 25 at the end of this month. I'm very proud of him. Him and his fiance got an apartment together across town. They're engaged. He'll be married in October. He's in a job where he's doing what he went to school for. He did finish associates. The pandemic wouldn't allow him to do the bachelor's thing and numerous other things. But he said, I'm an adult. You have to have trust in me that I can do the things. And so my amends is to do it differently. I can stay stuck in those old behaviors, or I can do it differently. And, because my son would say, and I would say this to any other family member, you don't have to say, I'm sorry. You can just choose different action. That tells me that you understand that, that wasn't good for me, and I'm going to do it differently if you want to continue to have a relationship with me, because I also talk about boundaries, because and some people think boundaries are bad, but actually they're beneficial to the whole party group or two-person dynamic, that everybody can benefit from them. And sometimes people like, well, when you hear that concept, are like, well, what does that mean? But my amends is just doing life differently. Because if you're doing it the same way over and over, Einstein says that's insanity, but I want to do it differently. But, there's sometimes, and this is progress, not perfection, I've been told, but the living amends is just doing it differently on purpose. We want
Good
to
for you.
improve. Yeah.
Good for you.
Mhm.
Can you hold your book up again? I think it's very appropriate. She is an overcomer like ENTV today. Like
Yeah.
seriously, but please drop the link for any books you got to.
Oh, okay.
People that want to connect with you, they'll
Mhm.
reach out.
Mhm.
What a story! And you know what I love, Teresa, about this the most is that you've embraced this very imperfect yet perfect, because it is there ever perfection anyway? So it's like you're embracing your imperfectly perfect journey with its questions and the doubts and the tears and the joy, and you're practicing living differently than you used to live, because you see that there's maybe a better way, and you are being an overcomer. So to me, you're a rock star. Yeah,
Yeah. And I am proud of my progress.
good.
I'm not the same person I was in my 20s.
Well then, there you
Yeah.
go.
And then at the same time, I forgive the Teresa in her 20s. She just didn't know.
Can we talk a bit about that forgiveness for what we didn't know back then?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Because I made some awful choices. I was on, the chair of the journalism department of the university I was going to, set up this internship, and it was there for 5 months. She loved my writing. I was getting hired on full time, and I got caught up in the drama of my friends, and, picked this partner because, I'd seen him before, and I was like, and I gave him my number, but I just I wasn't thinking through, I made it through college without, the safe sex and not getting pregnant and things like that. But yes, that happened. That's why we got married. And had it not been for that, I know that we wouldn't have lasted. But gosh darn if I wouldn't have picked another partner just like him, because the one before him was a train wreck. And I don't know why I was making these bad choices, so, but I do know that the version of me back then no longer exists, and I
Love
can
your
resonate.
authenticity. Your authenticity is so appealing, just so you know.
Yeah. And I can resonate with other young people that make poor choices and just love them for who they are. They just, you know, I don't, I also learned, I grew up in a judgmental household. I learned how to judge, and I just that it's sometimes when I get into that thinking, I have to come back and say, that's not, love everybody, be kind to everybody, because we're all just doing the best we can,
Sounds like you're being kind to yourself, which is probably where it all starts.
Yes, yes, yes. And things are looking a lot better now than last year. I went out to an outdoor concert a couple weeks ago, and I could actually feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not pretending to have a good time. I'm actually having a good time. So, yeah.
Good for you. Teresa, thank you for being here. ENTV today. Teresa Johnson Paul. Connect with her. She'd love to connect with you. Drop any links you got, Teresa, to anything you got going on in the comments of the Facebook group after. We'll end the interview here. Teresa, this is what a way to kick off a Friday. Interviewing you, your story. You're the first of 4 interviews I have today. And wow, it's a real pleasure to kick this off with you. It's not normal I have 4 in a day. I usually have 1. But what a joy, what a gift you are. Thank you for being so transparent and vulnerable. You're inspiring, Teresa. And I'm just thrilled you're part of this community. And we're kicking off our networking events within a week or 2. Look for that. Anyone that's been interviewed in the last 5-6 months is free to automatically participate in the networking events. So thanks for being here, Teresa.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
We'll end it here and we'll keep chatting.